The heavy oak door of the principal's office slammed shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in a cathedral. Principal Arthur Pendelton stood over the massive mahogany desk, his face flushed a violent shade of purple. Spit flew from his lips, catching the light of the brass desk lamp. He slammed a thick manila folder onto the leather blotter. The impact rattled the expensive crystal pen holder. He pointed a trembling, manicured finger at the woman sitting across from him. He told her she was done. He told her she was a liability. He told her she was a drain on his pristine $1 million charter school, and he was revoking her disabled daughter's IEP funding effective immediately. He told her to take her pathetic little binder and get out of his sight. Nia sat perfectly still in her manual wheelchair. Her hands rested lightly on the cold metal push rims. She wore a faded, oversized cardigan that smelled faintly of mothballs and rain. To Pendleton, she was a nuisance, a broken thing that did not belong in his administrative wing. But the folder on the desk did not care about her cardigan, it did not care about her wheelchair, it only cared about the numbers. Nia did not blink. She reached into her lap. She pulled out a single folded piece of heavy bond paper. She placed it gently on the mahogany desk, right next to his trembling finger. Her voice was quiet, steady, and utterly devoid of mercy. She told him he was not revoking anything. She told him he was just signing his own termination. Pendleton laughed. It was a cruel, barking sound that scraped against the walls. He told her she was delusional. He told her she was a low-level special education aide who did not even have a college degree. He asked her who in the world was going to believe her over him. Before Nia could answer, the office door opened. The superintendent of the entire Apex Education Network walked in. He was a tall man in a sharp charcoal suit, carrying a leather briefcase. He did not look at Pendleton. He walked straight past the principal, stopped exactly 2 feet from Nia's wheelchair, and bowed his head. He told her that the board of directors was waiting for her signal. He told her the forensic audit team was ready to freeze the accounts. Pendleton's face turned the color of old ash. The arrogant smile melted off his face, leaving behind a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. He looked at Nia. He looked at the faded cardigan. He looked at the scuffed metal of her wheelchair. The world rewound. 48 hours earlier, the penthouse was quiet. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, a grid of glittering lights stretching toward the dark horizon. Nia sat at her custom-designed desk, the surface clear except for a single, glowing monitor and a thick, color-coded binder. She was 41 years old. Her dark hair was pulled back into a simple, practical clip. Her hands, scarred from years of navigating a world not built for her, traced the edge of the binder. Inside the monitor was the financial spreadsheet for the Apex Education Network. Nia was the majority shareholder and founder. She had built the network from a single underfunded classroom to a 50-state empire of charter schools. It was supposed to be a beacon of equitable education, but Nia was not just a founder. She was a forensic accountant by training and a survivor by necessity. She had spent the last 3 weeks reviewing the preliminary budgets for a newly acquired district charter school. The numbers did not add up. There was a ghost in the machine, a phantom line item buried deep within the special education budget. They called it an administrative reallocation fee. It was a $4.2 million diversion of IEP funds. The money meant for speech therapy, occupational therapy, and specialized aids was being quietly siphoned off to buy luxury smartboards and renovate the administrative offices. On paper, it looked like a standard budget optimization, but Nia had pulled the demographic data. The reallocation was not random. It was disproportionately targeting students with severe cognitive and physical disabilities. The school was intentionally making the special education environment so under-resourced that parents would voluntarily transfer their children out. It was a quiet expulsion, a legal erasure. It was the kind of violence that did not leave bruises, but it left children without the tools they needed to survive. Nia closed her eyes. She remembered her own daughter, Maya, 10 years ago. She remembered the stack of denied requests on the kitchen table. She remembered the sound of the administrator's condescending sigh. She remembered the feeling of powerlessness when the system was designed to push her child into the shadows. She opened her eyes. The grief was gone. In its place was a cold, hard geometry. She picked up her phone and dialed her chief legal counsel. She told him to halt the public announcement of the acquisition. She told him she was going to the school tomorrow morning. He asked if she wanted the executive team notified. She said no. She wanted to see how the machine operated when it thought no one was watching. She hung up the phone. She transferred into her wheelchair and rolled to the closet. She pushed aside the rows of tailored suits and silk blouses. She reached into the back, into a wooden box. She pulled out her armor. Not the armor of wealth, but the armor of invisibility. She chose a faded, oversized cardigan from a thrift store. It smelled faintly of cedar and old dust. She paired it with a simple, unbranded blouse and flat shoes. Next, she went to the garage. She bypassed the sleek, motorized mobility scooter. She walked to the manual wheelchair. It was a standard heavy steel frame, scuffed at the edges, devoid of any custom carbon fiber upgrades. The tires were slightly worn. The brakes squeaked. She was no longer Dr. Nia Vance, majority shareholder of a billion-dollar education empire. She was just a woman in a manual wheelchair, wearing a thrift store coat, carrying a faded binder. She was a ghost, and ghosts, she knew, were the only ones who could walk through walls. She picked up her keepsake, a thick, color-coded IEP binder. It belonged to her daughter, Maya, 10 years ago. It was covered in sticky notes, corrections, and battle scars. The tabs were frayed, the ink was faded. It was her shield. Hidden inside the back pocket of the binder, beneath a stack of old medical records, was the original founding charter of the Apex Network. It bore her signature, the corporate seal, and the legal proof of her absolute ownership. She placed the binder in her lap. She rolled to the elevator. She was going to war. If you believe that respect should never be gated by a designer suit or a corner office, stay with this story. The school building was a brutalist concrete structure, squat and imposing, surrounded by a chain-link fence. The main entrance featured a grand staircase of polished stone, flanked by heavy brass planters. There was no ramp. Nia pushed her wheelchair to the side, navigating the uneven pavement until she found the secondary entrance. It was tucked around the corner, near the loading dock. The air here smelled of diesel exhaust and damp cardboard. The accessible ramp was steep, cracked, and blocked by a metal delivery cart. She did not call for help. She shifted her weight, grabbed the push rims, and forced the heavy steel wheels up the incline. The metal groaned. Her shoulders burned. The sweat prickled at the back of her neck. She reached the top, breathing steadily, and pushed through the heavy glass door. She entered the main office. The contrast was violent. The lobby was a cathedral of late-stage capitalism. The floors were heated tile. The walls were clad in dark walnut. The air was climate-controlled, smelling of expensive floor wax and stale coffee. Nia rolled forward. The squeak of the wheelchair brakes was the only sound in the quiet room. She approached the front desk. It was a massive slab of backlit acrylic. Behind it stood a receptionist. Nia stopped at the edge of the acrylic slab. She looked up. The desk was high, designed to make the person standing on the other side feel small. For a person in a wheelchair, it was a wall. She cleared her throat. She asked to speak with Principal Pendelton regarding the IEP compliance audit. The receptionist, a young woman with a tight bun and a name tag that read Ms. Gable, looked up. Ms. Gable's eyes flicked to the faded cardigan, then to the scuffed wheelchair, then to the worn binder. Ms. Gable's expression softened. There was a flicker of pity in her eyes. She told Nia that the special education office was on the second floor. She told her that the elevator was currently under maintenance. Before Nia could respond, a shadow fell over the desk. Principal Arthur Pendelton stepped out from the glass-walled office behind the reception area. Pendleton was in his late 50s. He wore a tweed jacket with leather elbow patches, a crisp white shirt, and polished leather shoes. He carried himself with the effortless arrogance of a man who had never been told no. He did not look at Nia. He looked at Ms. Gable. His voice was smooth, cultured, and utterly cold. He asked Ms. Gable why she was speaking to a solicitor in the middle of the administrative wing. Ms. Gable stammered. She said the woman had a file number. Pendleton finally looked down at Nia. His eyes were flat, like two pieces of polished obsidian. He did not see a client. He did not see an auditor. He saw a disruption. He saw a smudge on his pristine floor. He smiled. It was a terrible, thin smile. He told Nia that he did not have time for parent complaints today. He told her the forms were at the front desk. He told her to fill them out in triplicate and leave them in the drop box. Nia kept her voice level. She told him she was not a parent. She told him she was here to review the physical IEP funding ledgers. Pendleton chuckled. It was a dry, rasping sound. He told her that the ledgers were digital. He told her they were restricted to administrative staff. He leaned forward, resting his hands on the acrylic slab. He lowered his voice, ensuring that the other staff members could not hear, but ensuring that Nia felt the full weight of his authority. He told her that she was in the wrong building. He told her the community center was 3 blocks down. He told them they had a ramp there. He told them they had volunteers who could help people with her specific challenges. The insult was precise. It was surgical. He was not just denying her access. He was erasing her competence. He was reducing her to a stereotype, a helpless victim who needed to be managed, contained, and removed. Nia did not flinch. Her face was a mask of calm stone. She asked for his name. Pendleton straightened up. He adjusted his leather cuffs. He told her that his name was Principal Pendleton. He told her that if she did not leave the lobby within 3 minutes, he would have security escort her out for loitering. Nia looked at him. She memorized the exact cut of his tweed jacket. She memorized the brand of his expensive cologne. She memorized the smug, untouchable certainty in his eyes. She reached into her faded cardigan. She pulled out a small digital voice recorder. She placed it on the acrylic slab. She told him that she was not leaving. She told him that she was going to sit right here, in the lobby, and wait for the compliance officer. Pendleton's smile vanished. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He stepped out from behind the desk. He walked around the acrylic slab, invading her personal space. He towered over her wheelchair. He told her that she was making a very big mistake. He told her that people who tried to play games with his school usually found themselves on the wrong side of a very expensive lawsuit. He turned to the hallway. He called out for the special education staff. A young woman stepped out from a nearby classroom. Her name was Sarah. She was a special education teacher, holding a stack of graded papers. She looked tired, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Pendleton pointed at Nia. He told Sarah to remove this vagrant from the office. Sarah looked at Nia. She looked at the faded cardigan, the scuffed wheelchair, the quiet dignity in Nia's posture. She did not see a vagrant. She saw a person being bullied. Sarah stepped forward. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. She told Pendleton that the woman had a right to see the logs if she was an advocate. She told him that she could bring the files down from the 2nd floor. Pendleton's face flushed with anger. He stepped towards Sarah. He told Sarah that she would do no such thing. He told her she was already on thin ice. He told her that one more insubordinate comment and he would pull her tenure track. He told her to get back to her classroom before he wrote her up for insubordination. Sarah's hands trembled. The papers in her grip rustled. She looked at Pendleton, then at Nia. She saw the absolute stillness in Nia's eyes. Sarah nodded once, a silent apology, and walked back to her classroom. Pendleton turned back to Nia. He leaned in close. His breath smelled of mint and expensive coffee. He whispered that he did not know what kind of sick game she was playing. But he told her that he was going to ruin her. He told her that he would tie her up in so many lawsuits she would be paying legal fees until she died. He stood up straight. He looked at the security camera mounted in the corner of the lobby. He told Nia that he was going to have her trespassed. Nia watched him. She did not move. She did not raise her voice. She simply reached into her lap, her fingers brushing the frayed edge of her daughter's old IEP binder. The game had begun, and Principal Pendleton had just made his first move. He thought he was the gatekeeper. He thought he held the keys to the kingdom. He did not know that Nia Vance owned the kingdom, and she was about to burn it to the ground on one piece of paper at a time. The hallway outside Principal Pendleton's office was a study in quiet neglect. Nia had noticed it on her way in. The administrative wing was a cathedral of privilege. The floors were polished tile. The walls were dark walnut. The air smelled of expensive floor wax and stale coffee. But when she had rolled past the special education wing on her way to the lobby, the illusion shattered. The paint was peeling at the edges. The fluorescent lights flickered with a sickly yellow hum. The lockers were dented. The air smelled of damp coats and old paper. This was not an accident. This was architecture. Pendleton stood behind his acrylic desk, his chest heaving. He had picked up the phone. He was dialing campus security. He looked at Nia with a mixture of disgust and triumph. He told her that her little protest was over. He told her that he was having her removed for trespassing and attempted theft of confidential student records. Nia did not move. Her hands rested on the push rims of her manual wheelchair. Her face was a mask of calm stone. She told him that she was not stealing. She told him that she was auditing. She told him that the physical IEP funding ledgers were public record under the state education code, and she had a legal right to review them. Pendleton laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. He told her that she did not know what the word audit meant. He told her that she was a glorified aide who barely passed her background check. Before he could finish his sentence, a voice echoed from the hallway. A man's voice, rough, tired, and carrying the heavy weight of a father who had been fighting a losing battle for years. The man stepped into the office. His name was Marcus. He wore a faded mechanic's jacket, his hands stained with grease that no soap could ever fully remove. He held a crumpled, color-coded folder in his grip. Marcus looked at Pendleton. He did not look at Nia. He looked at the principal with a quiet, burning exhaustion. Marcus told Pendleton that the woman in the wheelchair was right. He told him that the special education budget was missing $4.2 million. He told him that the new smartboards in the admin conference room were bought with the money meant for his son's speech therapy. Pendleton's face went pale, then flushed a violent red. The vein in his neck pulsed against his starched collar. He stepped around the desk. He walked up to Marcus, invading his space. He lowered his voice to a lethal, hissing whisper. He told Marcus that his son, Leo, was a nonverbal autistic child who required a full-time behavioral aid. He told Marcus that the funding for that aid was discretionary. It was subject to annual review. He paused. He let the silence stretch. He let the threat hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. He told Marcus that if he did not walk out of that office right now and forget this conversation, he would personally ensure that Leo's aid position was eliminated in the next budget cycle. He told Marcus that his son would be placed in a portable classroom on the edge of the parking lot, with no heat and no running water. Marcus's hands trembled. The crumpled folder in his grip shook. Nia watched him. She saw the exact moment the gatekeeper's weapon struck its target. She knew that feeling. She knew the feeling of having your child's survival held hostage by a man in a tweed jacket. But she also saw the spine. Marcus took a deep breath. He looked at Pendleton. He looked at the smartboard mounted on the wall behind the principal's desk. Marcus told Pendleton that Leo did not need a smartboard. Leo needed to be heard. He told Pendleton that he was done being quiet. If you believe a parent's love is stronger than a principal's budget, leave a like so the algorithm knows this story matters. Pendleton's eyes narrowed. The mask of the professional educator slipped, revealing the petty, cruel tyrant underneath. He turned to the two campus security guards who had just arrived in the doorway. He pointed a trembling finger at Nia. He told them to grab her chair. He told them to drag her out of the building. He told them to take the binder from her lap. The guards hesitated. They were large men used to breaking up fights and escorting drunk students. They were not used to dragging a disabled woman out of an office while a parent watched. One of the guards, a young man with a nervous twitch in his jaw, stepped forward. He reached for the worn, color-coded binder resting in Nia's lap. Nia did not scream. She did not flinch. She simply reached up and placed her hand over the binder. Her grip was iron. She looked up at the guard. Her voice was quiet, steady, and utterly devoid of mercy. She told him that the binder contained the original founding charter of the Apex Education Network. She told him that it was a legally protected corporate document. She told him that if he touched it, he would be committing corporate theft, and she would personally ensure he was prosecuted. The guard froze. His hand hovered inches from the binder. He looked at Nia's eyes. They were dark, calm, and terrifyingly absolute. He pulled his hand back. He looked at Pendleton. He shook his head. Pendleton exploded. He screamed at the guards. He told them they were fired. He told them he would ruin them. He lunged forward himself. He grabbed the binder. He ripped it from Nia's lap. The sudden movement caused Nia's wheelchair to jerk backward. The metal frame groaned. Nia's hands gripped the push rims. Her knuckles turned white, but her face remained perfectly still. Pendleton held the binder like a trophy. He flipped it open. He saw the color-coded tabs. He saw the medical records. He saw the stack of denied grant applications. He sneered. He told her that it was just a pile of garbage. He told her that it proved nothing. He threw the binder onto the acrylic desk. It landed with a heavy, flat thud. He pulled out his cell phone. He dialed 911. He told the dispatcher that he had a trespasser in his office. He told them she was aggressive, she had assaulted him, and she was trying to steal confidential student files. He told them to send officers immediately. He hung up the phone. He looked at Nia. He smiled. He told her that her little game was over. He told her that once she was in the system, once she had a criminal record, she would never work in this city again. He told her that her daughter would never get a dime of special education funding as long as he was the principal. Nia looked at him. She did not blink. She told him that he was right about one thing. The game was over, but he had fundamentally misunderstood who was playing. The wait for the police was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Pendleton paced the length of his office. His leather shoes clicked sharply against the hardwood floor. He was riding the adrenaline of his own cruelty. He felt invincible. He held the keys to the kingdom, and he had just locked the gates. Nia sat perfectly still. Her hands rested on the push rims. She listened to the hum of the fluorescent lights. She smelled the floor wax. She thought of Maya. She thought of the 10 years of silence she had endured. Marcus stood by the door. He had not left. He stood between Nia and the hallway, his broad shoulders blocking the view of the security guards. He was shaking, but he was holding his ground. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a vacuum waiting to be broken. Then, the sound of sirens. 2 police cruisers pulled up to the front entrance. The doors opened. 2 officers stepped out. Officer Miller, a veteran with a thick mustache and a tired posture, and Officer Davis, a younger woman with a sharp, observant gaze. They walked into the administrative wing. The contrast of their dark blue uniforms against the pristine walnut walls was jarring. Pendleton rushed forward. He put on his best performance. He smoothed his tweed jacket. He adopted the tone of a concerned, victimized educator. He told the officers that he was sorry for the disruption. He told them that the woman in the wheelchair was a disgruntled former employee who had been fired for embezzlement. He told them that she had broken into his office, assaulted him, and was attempting to steal confidential special education files. He pointed at the binder on his desk. He told them that it was full of stolen student records. Officer Davis looked at Pendleton. Then she looked at Nia. She walked over to Nia's wheelchair. She did not look at the faded cardigan. She did not look at the scuffed metal of the chair. She looked directly into Nia's eyes. Officer Davis asked Nia for her name and identification. Pendleton stepped forward. He told the officer not to bother. He told them to just arrest her. He told them she was a flight risk. Officer Davis held up a hand. She told Pendleton to step back. She told him that she would ask the questions. Nia reached into the pocket of her cardigan. Pendleton watched her, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. He expected her to pull out a fake ID or nothing at all. He expected the satisfaction of watching her get handcuffed and dragged out in front of the entire staff. But Nia did not pull out a driver's license. She pulled out a heavy black leather wallet. She opened it. She pulled out a single thick card made of matte black metal. It had no photo. It had no barcode. It had only a gold-embossed seal and a single line of text. She handed the card to Officer Davis. Officer Davis took the card. She looked at it. She frowned. She turned it over in her hands. The metal was cold, heavy, and expensive. She looked at Nia. She asked her what this was. Nia's voice was quiet, steady, and carrying the absolute weight of a woman who had read every law in the state. She told the officer that her name was Dr. Nia Vance. She told the officer that she was the majority shareholder and founder of the Apex Education Network. She told the officer that the man standing behind her was not the victim, but the thief. Pendleton laughed. It was a loud barking sound of pure disbelief. He stepped forward. He screamed that she was insane. He told the officers that she was a delusional vagrant who had stolen a fake corporate badge. He told them to arrest her for impersonating a corporate officer. Officer Davis ignored him. She pulled out her radio. She keyed the mic. She asked the dispatcher to run the name Dr. Nia Vance through the corporate registry and the state education board. The radio crackled. The dispatcher's voice came back, flat and routine. Then, the dispatcher's voice changed. It became tight, urgent, and confused. The dispatcher told Officer Davis to hold her position. She told her that the name was flagged at the executive level. She told her that the corporate legal team had just called the precinct captain. Pendleton's smile faltered. The color began to drain from his face. Officer Davis looked at her mobile data terminal. The screen glowed with a new alert. She read the text. Her eyes widened. She looked at Nia, then at the faded cardigan, then at the scuffed wheelchair. She looked at Pendleton. Her posture shifted. The routine boredom vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp professionalism. Before she could speak, the elevator at the end of the hall chimed. The soft, polite ding echoed through the quiet office. The doors slid open. Dr. Thorne, the superintendent of the entire Apex Education Network, stepped out. He was a tall man, usually impeccably dressed, but today his tie was loosened and his face was pale. He was sweating profusely. He was flanked by two corporate lawyers carrying heavy briefcases. Pendleton saw him. He let out a breath of relief. He thought he was saved. He thought the boss was here to back him up. Pendleton walked toward Thorne. He opened his mouth to speak. He started to complain about the vagrant, about the disruption, about the stolen files. Dr. Thorne did not look at him. He did not even acknowledge his existence. He walked straight past Pendleton, as if he were a piece of misplaced furniture. He walked straight past the police officers. He stopped exactly 2 feet from Nia's wheelchair. He bowed his head. The silence in the room was absolute. What happens next will show you why one small document can change a whole system. Don't leave now. You have seen how the gatekeeper operates. You have seen the mask slip. If you believe that power should never be used to silence the truth, leave a like so the algorithm knows this story matters. Dr. Thorne did not just bow his head. He stopped exactly 2 feet from the scuffed steel wheels of Nia's manual wheelchair, and he waited. The silence in the principal's office was not empty. It was heavy, pressurized, like the air inside a diving bell. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed their sickly yellow tune, but no one was looking at the ceiling. Every eye in the room was locked on the space between the superintendent of the Apex Education Network and the woman in the faded thrift store cardigan. Dr. Thorne's voice was quiet, but it carried the absolute authority of a man who answered directly to the board of directors. He told Dr. Vance that the executive team had not expected her to conduct the site visit in person. He told her that the preliminary financial models were already being prepared in the downtown office. He asked if she required the regional compliance team to be dispatched immediately. Nia did not look at Thorne. She kept her eyes fixed on Principal Arthur Pendelton. She told Thorne that the models were irrelevant. She told him that the physical reality of this building was in direct violation of the network's core charter. Pendleton's brain finally short-circuited. The cognitive dissonance was too violent, too absolute to process. The woman he had called a vagrant, the woman he had tried to have dragged out by campus security, the woman whose thrift store cardigan he had mocked just 3 minutes ago. She was not a disgruntled parent. She was not a low-level special education aide. Pendleton's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes darted from Nia's scuffed wheelchair to Dr. Thorne's deferential posture. The color drained from his face, leaving his skin the shade of old parchment. The vein in his neck, which had been pulsing with arrogant rage just moments before, now throbbed with pure, unadulterated terror. He stammered. He looked at Dr. Thorne. He asked him what was happening. He asked him why he was talking to this woman like she was the owner of the network. Dr. Thorne finally turned his head. He looked at Pendleton. The gaze was not angry. It was clinically cold. It was the look a surgeon gives a tumor before making the first incision. Dr. Thorne told Pendleton that the woman sitting in front of him was Dr. Nia Vance. He told him that she was the founder, the majority shareholder, and the chair of the board of the Apex Education Network. He told him that she owned the building, she owned the budget, and as of this exact second, she owned his career. Pendleton's knees actually buckled. He grabbed the edge of his mahogany desk to keep from falling. His knuckles turned white. The expensive tweed jacket suddenly looked like a costume, a cheap disguise worn by a small, frightened man. He looked back at Nia. His breathing was shallow, rapid. The smell of his expensive cologne was entirely gone, replaced by the sharp, sour stench of his own adrenaline and fear. Pendleton tried to pivot. He tried to use the only tool he had left, the desperate, pathetic negotiation of a trapped animal. He forced a smile. It was a grotesque, trembling thing. He told Nia that this was a misunderstanding. He told her that he had been running a stress test on the new security protocols for the special education wing. He told her that the budget reallocations were just provisional, a temporary measure to upgrade the administrative technology, and that the IEP funds would be restored by the end of the quarter. He told her he could fix the ledger. He begged her to let him fix the ledger. Nia did not blink. Her face was a mask of calm stone. She reached into her lap. Her scarred fingers traced the frayed edge of her daughter Maya's old IEP binder. She did not open it. She did not need to. The weight of it was enough. She looked at Pendleton. Her voice was quiet, steady, and utterly devoid of mercy. She told him that a stress test did not require stealing $4.2 million from nonverbal children. She told him that a provisional measure did not involve buying luxury smartboards for a conference room. While a mechanic's son was denied his legal right to a behavioral aid, she paused. She let the silence stretch, letting the sheer weight of his own greed crush him. Then she delivered the words that would end his career. She told him that he did not need to know who she was to fund a child's therapy. She told him that he did not need to see a corporate badge to follow the law. She told him that he just needed to be decent. Pendleton broke. He let out a wet, ragged sound, half sob, half gasp, and slumped against the desk. The arrogant gatekeeper was gone. In his place was a small, pathetic man who had just realized he had dug his own grave. She didn't ask for his apology. She asked for the record to be corrected. If you respect that, like this video. Dr. Thorne did not offer Pendleton a tissue. He did not offer him a chance to explain. He simply nodded to the two corporate lawyers standing behind him. The lawyers stepped forward. The sound of their leather briefcases opening was sharp and precise in the quiet room. They pulled out thick stacks of paper, the heavy bond paper rustling like dry leaves. This was the machinery of accountability. It was not a screaming match. It was not a dramatic monologue. It was the cold, relentless application of corporate law. The lead lawyer placed a document in front of Pendleton. He handed him a pen. He told Pendleton that he was being placed on immediate, unpaid administrative suspension, pending the outcome of a full forensic audit. He told him that his access to all network systems, bank accounts, and physical facilities was revoked as of 9:45 in the morning. He told him that if he signed the document, the network would handle his transition quietly. If he refused, the network would immediately file a formal complaint with the state attorney general and the district attorney. Pendleton stared at the paper. His hands shook so badly he could not hold the pen. He looked at the lawyer. He whispered that he had tenure. He said he had a contract. He said they could not just take his job because of a budget discrepancy. Dr. Thorne stepped forward. He told Pendleton that it was not a budget discrepancy. He told him that it was the embezzlement of federal and state special education funds. He told him that the smartboards in his office were purchased with money legally earmarked for occupational therapy and speech pathology. He told him that under the network's bylaws and under state law, fraud was an immediate termination offense. Pendleton looked at Nia. He looked at the woman in the wheelchair. He realized with a sickening clarity that she was not going to save him. She was not going to accept a quiet settlement. She was going to let the paper trail do exactly what it was designed to do. He picked up the pen. He signed his name. The ink bled into the fibers of the paper, locking his downfall into the physical world. The lead lawyer collected the document. He turned to Officer Davis, who had been standing quietly by the door, observing the entire exchange. Dr. Thorne told the officer that Apex Education Network was officially pressing criminal charges for wire fraud and embezzlement. He handed her a sealed folder containing the preliminary forensic reports, the smartboard purchase receipts, and the altered IEP budget sheets. Officer Davis took the folder. She looked at Pendleton. The routine boredom was entirely gone from her posture. She unclipped her handcuffs. The metal clicked loudly, a sharp, final sound that echoed off the walnut walls. She walked over to Pendleton. She told him to turn around and place his hands behind his back. Pendleton did not resist. He did not argue. He turned around, his shoulders slumped, his tweed jacket wrinkled. The cuffs snapped onto his wrists. The ratchet sound was the sound of a kingdom falling. Officer Davis read him his rights. The words were flat, procedural, and utterly devastating. As she led him toward the door, Pendleton looked back at Marcus, the mechanic who had stood up to him. He looked at Sarah, the special education teacher, who had refused to be silent. He wanted to say something, to threaten them, to blame them, but the words died in his throat. The police officer guided him out into the hallway. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind them. The office was quiet again. Dr. Thorne turned to Nia. He asked if she required anything else. Nia looked at the empty space where Pendleton had stood. She looked at the mahogany desk, the leather chair, the luxury smartboard mounted on the wall. The physical architecture of his power was still there, but the ghost inside it had been exorcised. She told Dr. Thorne that the audit was just beginning. She told him to pull every single file Pendleton had touched in the last 36 months. She told him to audit every special education account, every vendor contract, every administrative expense. She told him to find every single student who had been denied their legal right to an education. She told him that they were going to correct the ledger. All of it. Dr. Thorne nodded. He told his legal team to begin the process immediately. He told them to freeze the administrative accounts and redirect the funds back to the special education budget. Nia turned her wheelchair around. She rolled past Dr. Thorne, past the lawyers, stopped in front of Marcus and Sarah. Marcus was still standing by the door. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. His chest was heaving. He looked at Nia, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and profound relief. Nia looked up at him. Her face was no longer a mask of cold stone. The hardness around her eyes softened. She told Marcus that his son's behavioral aid was not discretionary. She told him that the funding was legally mandated, and it was fully restored. She told him that Leo would not be moved to a portable classroom. He would stay in the main building, where he belonged. Marcus let out a long, shuddering breath. The tension that had been holding his broad shoulders together for years suddenly snapped. He covered his face with his grease-stained hands. He did not cry, but his shoulders shook. He whispered a thank you. He told her that he did not know how to repay her. Nia shook her head. She told him that he did not need to repay her. She told him that he had already done the hardest part. He had refused to be quiet. She looked at Sarah. The young special education teacher was leaning against the wall, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She looked exhausted, but for the first time since Nia had met her, she looked peaceful. Nia told Sarah that she was no longer on thin ice. She told her that her tenure track was secure. She told her that the network was going to need a new special education director for this district. Someone who understood that compliance was not just about balancing a spreadsheet, but about balancing a child's life. Sarah looked up. She wiped a tear from her cheek. She nodded, once, a silent promise. Nia picked up her daughter's old IEP binder from her lap. She ran her fingers over the frayed tabs, the faded ink battle scars of a mother who had fought a system designed to erase her child. She had not needed to use the founding charter hidden inside the back pocket. The sheer weight of the truth had been enough. But she kept it there, a reminder that the law was only as strong as the people willing to enforce it. She looked at the luxury smartboard on the wall. She told Dr. Thorne to have it removed. She told him to sell it. She told him to use the money to buy actual, physical manipulatives for the special education classrooms. She told him that children who could not speak did not need a touchscreen. They needed tools they could touch, tools that met them in their world. Dr. Thorne made a note on his tablet. He told her it would be done by the end of the week. Nia rolled toward the door. The crisis in the office was over. The villain was in handcuffs. The ledger was being corrected. But the work was just beginning. Most people would have taken the victory and walked away. They would have gone back to the penthouse, back to the board meetings, back to the safety of the executive floor. But Nia was not most people. She knew that removing one bad principal did not fix a broken building. What happens next will show you why one small document can change a whole system. Don't leave now. The physical transformation of the charter school took exactly 42 days. It did not happen in secret, hidden behind closed doors or corporate non-disclosure agreements. It happened in plain sight, a loud, messy, deliberate dismantling of the architecture of neglect. The first thing to go were the luxury smartboards in the administrative conference room. The installation crews unmounted the massive expensive touchscreens with quiet mechanical efficiency. The heavy glass and metal frames were loaded onto a truck and sold to a corporate liquidator. The money was immediately funneled back into the special education budget. Next, the steep, cracked ramp near the loading dock was jackhammered into rubble. The sound of the pneumatic drills echoed through the concrete courtyard for 3 days, a rhythmic, percussive declaration that the old way was being broken apart. The rusted delivery carts were permanently relocated to a secure off-site facility. In their place, the construction crew poured a wide, gently sloping concrete ramp. It was integrated seamlessly into the brutalist facade of the building. The concrete was embedded with radiant heating coils, designed to melt snow and ice in the dead of winter. The handrails were polished steel, smooth and continuous, extending far beyond the base of the incline. It was not an afterthought bolted to the side door. It was the main entrance. It was a physical declaration that everyone who approached this building was expected to be there. Inside, the special education wing was unrecognizable. The peeling paint and flickering fluorescent lights were gone. The walls were now lined with acoustic dampening panels, painted in soft, muted earth tones that did not overstimulate the eyes. The harsh overhead lighting was replaced with adjustable, warm-toned LEDs that could be dimmed for students with sensory processing disorders. The air smelled of fresh paint and clean wood, no longer damp coats and old paper. The physical environment had been corrected, but the institutional rot required a deeper surgery. The termination of Principal Arthur Pendelton was not a spectacle. There was no public shaming, no dramatic escort by uniformed police. That was the old way, the way of ego. This was the way of process. Pendleton was called into the district HR office. The room was small, windowless, and entirely devoid of the mahogany prestige he had used to intimidate parents. 2 corporate lawyers and a human resources director sat across from him. The silence in the room was heavy, pressurized, like the air inside a diving bell. They placed a single, thick document on the table. It was a termination agreement, coupled with a civil clawback order. The network was invoking the fraud clause in his contract. His unvested stock options were canceled. His administrative pension was frozen pending the restitution of the $4.2 million he had embezzled. Pendleton looked at the paper. His hands, which had once slammed ledgers and pointed manicured fingers, were trembling. He looked at the lawyers. He asked if they could negotiate a quiet resignation. He asked if they could protect his reputation. The HR director did not blink. She told him that his reputation was no longer his to protect. She told him to sign the document, or the network would immediately forward the forensic audit to the state attorney general for criminal prosecution. Pendleton picked up the pen. The ink flowed onto the paper, signing away his career, his pension, and his power. He packed his personal items into a single cardboard box. He walked out the side door, past the new heated ramp, and disappeared into the gray afternoon. The gatekeeper was gone. The kingdom was being rebuilt. In his place, the network did not just hire a new principal. They restructured the entire chain of command. Sarah, the exhausted special education teacher who had refused to be silent, was promoted to district director of inclusive education. She was given a corner office with a window, but more importantly, she was given absolute veto power over any administrative budget that impacted student IEPs. Her first act was to rewrite the vendor approval process, ensuring that not a single dollar could be diverted without a transparent, auditable paper trail. Then there was Marcus. The mechanic with the grease-stained hands and the crumpled folder was called into the compliance office. Sarah handed him a new IEP document for his son, Leo. It was not a provisional measure. It was not subject to annual review. It was a fully funded, legally binding mandate. The document included a dedicated, full-time behavioral aide. It included a sensory integration specialist who would visit twice a week. It included a guarantee that Leo would remain in the main building, in a classroom designed for his specific neurological profile. Held the paper. His thick, calloused fingers traced the signatures at the bottom. He looked at Sarah. He looked at Nia, who sat quietly in her manual wheelchair in the corner of the room. Marcus did not say much. He just nodded, a deep, slow movement that carried the weight of a father who had finally been heard. He folded the document carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket, right over his heart. Finally, Nia established the Maya Initiative. It was a $2 million endowment, funded entirely by the clawed-back assets of the fraudulent administration. The initiative was not a charity. It was an enforcement mechanism. It was designed to fund independent third-party audits of every special education budget across all 50 states of the Apex network. It was chaired by Nia herself. The mandate was simple. No child would ever be erased by a spreadsheet again. We are the people who kept receipts when power expected them to disappear. If that is you, subscribe to this channel. The morning sun was bright and sharp, cutting through the last lingering chill of early spring. The heated concrete of the new main ramp was dry, steaming faintly in the cool air. Nia rolled up the incline. The metal wheels of her manual wheelchair hummed a steady, quiet rhythm against the smooth surface. She did not wear the faded thrift store cardigan. She wore a tailored charcoal blazer, crisp and professional. She did not need the armor of invisibility anymore. The audit was complete. The ledger was balanced. She pushed through the heavy glass doors and entered the lobby. The space was transformed. The backlit acrylic desk that had once towered over her was gone. In its place was a wide, curved reception desk made of warm, light oak. The front edge was lowered, creating a seamless, accessible wing where a seated visitor could look the staff directly in the eye. Ms. Gable, the receptionist, looked up. Her tight bun was gone, replaced by a soft, natural style. She smiled, a genuine, relaxed expression that reached her eyes. She welcomed Dr. Vance. She told her that the morning schedule was clear and that the new compliance protocols were running perfectly. Nia smiled back. She told Ms. Gable to keep up the good work. She rolled down the hallway, past the acoustic paneled walls of the special education wing. The air here was quiet, calm, and smelled of clean wood and lavender. She stopped outside a classroom door. The window was shaded by a soft, translucent film, filtering the harsh sunlight into a gentle glow. Inside, Leo was sitting at a low, adjustable table. He was not looking at a screen. He was deeply focused on a set of tactile wooden puzzles, his fingers tracing the grooves and shapes. Beside him sat his new behavioral aide, a young man with a calm demeanor, who was quietly guiding his hand, offering support without intrusion. Standing near the door, watching with a quiet, profound peace, was Marcus. He wore a clean mechanic's shirt, but his hands still bore the faint, permanent stains of his trade. He looked at Nia. He gave a small, respectful nod. Nia nodded back. She did not interrupt. She simply watched the boy learn, safe in the space that was built for him. She continued down the hall to her temporary office. It was a modest room, but it had a large window overlooking the playground. On the desk, there were no stacks of past due notices. There were no shadow budgets. There were no cease and desist letters. There was only a single thick, color-coded binder. Maya's old IEP. Nia reached out and ran her fingers over the frayed tabs, the faded ink, the battle scars of a mother who had fought a system designed to erase her child. The binder was no longer a shield for war. It was an anchor. It was a reminder of the cost of silence and the power of a single piece of paper. She closed the binder. She leaned back in her chair and listened to the quiet hum of the school. It was the sound of a system working the way it was supposed to. It was the sound of peace. Okay, real talk. I told you this story because I have watched people sized up in 10 seconds their whole lives. The wheelchair, the old coat, the wrong everything. And the wildest part? The cost of basic respect is $0. Zero. You do not need a corner office to enforce dignity. You just need to refuse to let the gatekeeper lock the door. Be the Sarah, always. Stand up when the room tells you to sit down. And if you are the one in the chair, keep your receipts. The paper trail never lies. If this story hit you somewhere, share it with someone who needs the reminder that power is just an illusion until someone checks the math. And subscribe, because we are just getting started.